Good morning. Great to have you with us for this Tuesday edition of the Asia Business Report, live on BBC World. I'm Rico Hizon. U.S. President George W. Bush arrives in Australia later today to attend the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. One key issue on his agenda is reviving the Doha round of trade talks. But no one knows for sure if there will be a breakthrough, as Europe and India are not part of the annual summit of the APEC.
Obviously, no single country or group of countries is going to ensure that the Doha round succeeds. We do know, however, that one country or a handful of countries are in a position to block it. The APEC member economies have tended to be among the most forward-leaning pro-trade participants in the Doha round, and therefore are in a position to lead their colleagues in Geneva as the talks resume this week in Geneva in the direction of a successful round, and we hope lead by example.
And that was Susan Schwab, the U.S. Trade Representative. And another key issue on the APEC agenda is climate change. Australian Prime Minister John Howard is urging leaders to forge a new international framework on global warming. But member countries are split. Some nations say Australia and the United States should back off because they have not ratified an earlier UN-backed arrangement, the Kyoto Protocol. APEC economies include the world's top 3 greenhouse gas emitters: America, China, and Russia. Whatever comes out of this APEC meeting could shape negotiations at a UN meeting in Bali, Indonesia this coming December. First views now on the ongoing climate change debate. We're talking now to Reza Ali of ACCA Singapore. Thank you so much for joining us. Some quarters are saying that Australia and the United States should back off on the Kyoto Protocol because they have not ratified it. Do they have a point here?
No, I think the first thing that we have to note is that just a year ago in the APEC summit held in Vietnam, climate change barely got a passing mention. But this year it has become a central topic, and I think it shows and displays just how important climate change has become to the world. Now, with regards to Australia and America as to why they're proposing this, they are proposing an aspirational target. Basically, they want a non-binding emissions target set on the countries where they work towards a goal of reducing carbon emission.
So should there be a non-binding or binding emission target?
I think the Kyoto Protocol states that there should be a binding target, emission target for developed countries, the Annex 1 countries, because they believe that the historical and the current high levels of emissions is due to developed countries. But they have not placed any binding targets on developing countries because countries to develop to meet the societal and economic needs need to increase their emission output, and therefore it will not be feasible for them to reduce emissions target.
So does this new international framework on global warming being pushed forward by Australia, is it another step forward beyond the Kyoto Protocol because it sets targets for both developing and developed nations?
I think what John Howard is proposing is a non-binding agreement, and this will not necessarily promote the reduction of climate change, of greenhouse gases. But I think this summit will help build consensus for the upcoming UN Conventions on Climate Change to be held in Bali this year. So I think what's important is that the APEC summit traditionally has been for trade and investment, but now we see countries actually focusing on climate change, and this is an important first step. The fact that they recognize as a problem and the fact that they now see that they have to tackle the issue of climate change means that it shows that there's progress on the political front, that leaders have recognized the fact to address the issue of climate change.
But first and foremost, before we even move forward, whether it be binding or non-binding emission targets, should Australia and the United States ratify the Kyoto Protocol first?
I think this is a decision which obviously the American and the Australian government have to make, but it is in the best interest of the world at large that countries work towards in concerted action together to reduce and to work towards the reduction of greenhouse emission gases. And I think countries have to come together, have to form consensus and build consensus so that there is a common concerted action towards reduction of greenhouse gases.
This whole climate change issue is becoming like the Doha round of trade talks wherein countries between developed and developing nations cannot seem to agree and have a middle ground on how to move forward.
Yes, I think initially there will always be a lot of conflicts as to what is the best way to solve the problem. But summits like this, like the APEC summit, I think this is not the destination itself. It's part of a longer journey where countries come together to try and build consensus to achieve the reduction of greenhouse emission gases and ensure there's a sustainable environment for humanity to live on in the coming future.
Reza Ali of ACCA Singapore.
Thank you.
Nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, an Airbus A380 cruised past Hong Kong's famous skyline twice on Monday in a bid to